We have Abayomi on the line. Let's bring him on. Hotep Abayomi, how you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm all right, brother. I'm all right. Well, it's been all over the news, and it's something that has been kind of expected, something inevitable, number one, but something that we knew we were going to have to probably deal with sooner or later, because President Nelson Mandela had been in and out of the hospital and things like that. But, even when it happens, I don't think people are still really prepared for it. So, but it happened today. He made his transition. He's an ancestor now. So we wanted to talk about, bring Abayomi Azikwe on, editor of the Pan-African Newswire, so we can talk some about the history of Nelson Mandela, why he was a national figure, international figure, and also look at his change in philosophy. Was that for the better? And what condition is South Africa in? I don't know if you saw ABC News tonight, but I watch ABC News a lot. And so tonight, the 6:30 broadcast anchored by Diane Sawyer, and they had George Stephanopoulos on. Okay, so he's on Good Morning America, but he was on Tonight reporting as well, and he talked about how Nelson Mandela abandoned his philosophy of violence and adopted nonviolence, and this was for the better, and South Africa became free and things of this nature. So one thing we also want to do, Abayomi, is separate fact from fiction as well. But give us an overview of the significance of the life of Nelson Mandela.
Yeah, I believe that he's gone down as one of the great revolutionary fighters and statesmen of the 20th century. And it's not surprising that the corporate media in this country and other countries will attempt to sanitize his legacy and distort his legacy. They did the same thing with so many other historical figures. I'm old enough to remember the death of Martin Luther King in 1968. And they had sanitized his legacy. I remember the eulogizing that was done by CBS, NBC, and ABC. And the thing is, they had people in the government, including Lyndon Johnson, praising Dr. King when, in fact, they were responsible for his death. During the last year and a half of his life, he was blocked, from even being invited to the White House or having any real contact with the Johnson administration. And he was largely blocked out of the media during the last year and a half of his life for various reasons. One being his opposition to the war in Vietnam, his criticism of the Johnson administration for not following through on the so-called war on poverty and the commitments that have been made to the civil rights movement, and also his linking of poverty with the Pentagon budget and imperialist war. Mandela, for example, his capture in 1962 in South Africa had a lot to do with the role of the American Central Intelligence Agency. They had operatives. Yes, they had operatives in South Africa, and they were able to track down Mandela, and it led to his arrest along with other members of the Spirit of the Nation, Umkhonto we Sizwe, which was the armed wing of the African National Congress that had been set up about a year and a half prior to the raid on the Rivonia farm, where Mandela and his comrades were captured, held, and they were put on trial in 1964, and they were sentenced. So many people thought they were going to be given a life sentence. A death sentence. They could have easily been hung by the white settler government, because of international pressure, they were in fact given a life sentence, and they were sent to one of the harshest prisons in the world at that time, Robben Island. It was a very isolated area, and they were forced to do hard labor every day. They were in total isolation. They were subjected to torture and mental anguish and so forth. And at the same time, Mandela's organization, the African National Congress, as well as other organizations, were banned. The top leadership was arrested. Many of them were killed. Some, like Oliver Tambo, who took over with the arrest of Mandela, fled to Botswana, later to Tanganyika at the time, which later became Tanzania. Then he went to England, to try to rebuild the international structure for the movement. But yeah, they're gonna, try to sanitize and his legacy and all of that. But Mandela is a product of the South African struggle. All great leaders are products of their people and their people's struggle and the historical evolution of their people's movements. Martin Luther King would have never been who he was if it had not been for the general mood that existed in the African American community during that particular time period that catapulted him into a position of being a spokesperson and a leader. If he had just been on his own, he would have never gotten hardly anywhere. People may or may not have even known who he was if it had not been for a movement. And that's true of so many people, Ida B. Wells, so many others, Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey. I mean, Garvey had millions of followers. So,
yes,
just you cannot isolate the man and the woman from the movement. You cannot isolate the man and the woman from their people. You cannot isolate them from history. And this,
correct,
of course, is what they always attempt to do, this whole great man and great woman theory of history. And it's a big fallacy.
Yes, they try to isolate them. Yeah, they try to make them personalities and separate the personality from the circumstances that created the personality.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right, exactly, right. And that's what's key in looking at how the corporate media will be handling the passing of Mandela. And it's a repeated repeated mantra that they pull every time a great leader, be he African or some other people of color nation. This is how they address it.
Absolutely. Well, on the Huffington Post this evening, there's an article we posted on our Facebook pages, and my friend Ken Harris posted on his page. That's where I saw it. It's entitled, "Dick Cheney didn't regret his vote against freeing Nelson Mandela, maintained he was a terrorist." So Dick Cheney, former Vice President of the United States, former head of now he was head of the CIA also, wasn't he, at one point, Dick Cheney? Is that correct?
I'm not sure. I know he was,
okay.
part of the the Nixon administration, the Ford administration, the Reagan administration, the Bush administration, both Bush administrations.
Right, exactly. Oh, he's been around for a long time, exactly. I can't remember. I thought he was head of the, I know Bush Sr. was former head of the CIA, but Dick Cheney voted against Nelson Mandela being released in 1986, and he says he doesn't regret that vote. Okay, he said the ANC was a terrorist organization back then, and I posted on Facebook, Dick Cheney would probably call Harriet Tubman a terrorist also.
Of course.
Explain to people, because a lot of people who may be in, say, their early 20s or something like that, they may not know apartheid. They may have heard about it here and there, but see, when I started at Wayne State University, you had the anti-apartheid movement going on, 1989. Okay, and I remember us learning about it in high school, and then I remember you had the Sun City movement, and you had Free Nelson Mandela. You had an anti-apartheid movement and a push by college students and other people. But when we look at on college campuses, you have an activism and a push by college students to get corporations and also their universities and backers of the universities, things like this, to divest from corporations in South Africa. So explain to people what the apartheid system was and how it came about, briefly, if you could, please.
Yeah, you're right. There was a huge movement on university campuses in the 1980s, 1990s. A lot of it had started in the 70s, and it was largely targeted because a lot of these major multinational corporations have huge stakes in state universities, and they are involved in donating money. They have research programs. They donate money for different academic projects, and of course the defense industry plays a role in the university. So does the intelligence services. A lot of them recruit heavily from universities. The CIA, the FBI, defense intelligence, the military in general. They have recruitment operations on these various campuses. So this is why it became a focus on most of the major campuses in the United States. I know at Wayne State in 1983, the Board of Governors there voted to divest from the apartheid-linked corporations, and to do that, it was based upon some legislation that had been passed the year before in Lansing during that. So that shows how broad and effective, the struggle against racism in South Africa was, even as early as the early 1980s, and then it just grew. And when I was at Wayne State, we were doing a lot of stuff in regard to disinvestment. We also had General Motors as a target, demanding that they withdraw, period, from South Africa. We held demonstrations at General Motors. We put out information about General Motors. We held conferences in 1984, in 1985, and 1986, not just against U.S. corporate involvement and U.S. military and political involvement in South Africa, but also in support of the liberation movements, the ANC, the Southwest Africa People's Organization, SWAPO, in Namibia, which at that time was under South African colonial rule. And, of course, the struggle in South Africa and Namibia was linked to the struggle throughout the entire region of southern Africa, in Zimbabwe, and Angola, and Mozambique, and Botswana, and Lesotho, Swaziland. All of these countries, contiguous states to South Africa and Namibia, were heavily involved in this struggle because the apartheid state and political system was, in essence, an economic system. Just like slavery, in essence, was an economic system. It was set up to maximize the exploitation of African labor. That was the main focus, behind apartheid. It was essentially
these were the Dutch
labor.
Afrikaners. These were the Dutch Afrikaners,
came there
right?
In the 17th century. Yeah, Jan van Riebeck came to the Cape of Good Hope in 1652, and in fact, he brought African slaves with him from other parts of Africa. A lot of people are not aware of that. And there was legalized slavery. Go ahead.
No, what was his person's name? What was his person's name?
Jan van Riebeck. Yeah, he was a Dutch explorer, colonialist, and he went to South Africa in 1652, and he did have African slaves with him. And then, of course, more Dutch people began to immigrate to South Africa, but also in the 18th century, the British began to come in large numbers. And so eventually, in the 19th century, there was a conflict between the Boers and the British that exploded into a actual civil war called the Anglo-Boer War between around 1898, 1899 up until 1902. And a lot of people died in that war. I mean, these are Europeans that were fighting over control of South Africa because the Cape was a British colony, and the Free State was more controlled by the Boers. And then, of course, you also had the British also moving into Zimbabwe and Zambia, which then was known as Southern Rhodesia and Northern Rhodesia. Cecil Rhodes, one of the great imperialists. Yeah, they have a Rhodes Scholarship named after him now. That's who that scholarship is named after. He made a tremendous amount of money exploiting African labor and resources, the gold, the diamonds, and they were extremely racist, these people. So they instituted a form of slavery on the African continent, and that's what the real struggle was about, and our people resisted it from day one. There were always revolts. There was always attacks, against the British and the Boers, all during particularly the 19th century. The war really heated up as the European immigration escalated. And the so-called Kaffir wars that were fought during the mid-19th century against the Xhosa people and the Boers, thousands of people died, in those wars. Zulus also fought against the British. It was Sitwayo in 1879, one of the Zulu kings that fought against the British, and then there was the Battle of Blood River, which was earlier in the 19th century. And then later on, there was the Bambata Rebellion in the early part of the 20th century. That's what it named Africa Bambata. It was inspired by one of the last, during the colonial era, one of the last attempts by Africans to fight, against European domination. It was labeled Bambata.
African Bambata, the Zulu nation. African Bambata, the hip-hop artist, the Zulu nation. Okay. And you said that name comes from...
Yeah, that's based on a real history. Yes, the Bambata Rebellion of 1906. Okay. And that was one of the last armed violent rebellions by Africans against the encroachment of Europeans. Now, in 1910, the British and the Boers, after they had fought this bloody war for 4 years earlier, made a compromise and formed what was known as the Union of South Africa. That was formed in 1910. And that was a unholy alliance between the British and the Boers. And the British kind of dominated that alliance between 1910 up to 1948 for about 38 years. During that time period, you had the advent of World War I and later World War II. And a lot of the Boer nationalists, the so-called Afrikaner nationalists, were Nazis. I mean, that was their ideological orientation. They believed in the superiority of the white race, the European race. And they did support Hitler and other fascists during the 30s and the 40s. Some of them were even in prison because the British were dominant in South Africa up until 1948. And then in 1948, the Afrikaner Nationalist Party took over. They won an electoral campaign. They took over. And but the British were still there. They still had their corporations. They still had their business interests there. But the Afrikaner became more dominant during that time period. Now, going back, after 1906, when the Bambata Rebellion was crushed, in 1912, there was the formation of the South African Native National Congress, and that later became the African National Congress. And what they did, they got all the various groups, the Basutu people, the Xhosa people, the Zulu people, the Swanas, all these various African nations came together and formed the Native National Congress, which later became the African National Congress. So from its beginning, the ANC was a Pan-African movement in the sense that it brought together all these different ethnic groups and nations to fight against white domination. And that started in 1912. They just commemorated their 100th anniversary last year. Yeah, and then, after that, and they always had close ties with Africans in the United States. People like John L. Dubé and Sime, Pixley Sime, and others traveled to the United States during the early part of the 20th century. Some of them lived here for a period of time. They lectured. They worked, with various African churches and civic organizations and so forth. So there's always been a close link between the struggle of African Americans and people in South Africa. It just didn't start during the 1980s. It goes back, all the way back to the beginning of the 20th century. So that's just some of the history. What apartheid really was, as I said, it's like what slavery was. It was an economic system to maximize, the exploitation of African labor and African resources, and the whole political superstructure was built on that. That's why they had to divide people. That's why they had to suppress them. They had prisons, and it's the same oppressive mechanism that we even see today.
Absolutely. Now let me ask you this question. Okay, so he goes to prison. He's convicted. He goes to prison for 27 years. He comes out of prison. He then becomes president of South Africa. Okay. Now, I remember Dr. John Henry Clark talking about how Nelson Mandela becoming president, something to the effect of how this is not going to change the conditions for majority of South Africans, okay, and how he may have the political power, but it's the Dutch Afrikaners who still control the majority of the wealth and resources, things of this nature. How do we put, because now the reason why I bring this up, and I don't mean any disrespect to Nelson Mandela, but what happens is that the media tries to tell us that because the South Africans could vote, this was another big thing. This was like the first election. If I remember correctly, the presidential election. This was like the first election. Yeah, in '94, that the majority of the South Africans could vote. So especially the Western powers and the European media in general, they tried to promote the notion that now that South Africans can vote, and these black South Africans can vote, and that you have Nelson Mandela as president, now the people are free. Okay, put that in historical context. What were they free? What did that mean for them? Explain that to us, please.
Well, first of all, we have to understand that conditions under which the struggle was developing during particularly the early 1990s, it had changed radically than what it had even 10 years prior to that. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, which had given a tremendous amount of support to the African National Congress, as well as the Soviet Union's allies in Eastern Europe, like the German Democratic Republic and others, and even Yugoslavia had also supported the South African and as well as the Namibian struggle. When these allies were no longer in existence, they had to make a tactical decision in terms of what direction they were going to go when they got their independence. And they remained economically within the sphere of world capitalism. This is in essence what happened. Now, that's not to say that they abandoned their people. There were tremendous reforms that were instituted after 1994. For example, the building of millions of homes, the democratizing of the health system in South Africa. There was also the expansion of Africans, involved in government and business, and the opportunity to do that. Also, the release of political prisoners inside the country was done as early as 1990. But no, there has not been a fundamental economic revolution in South Africa since 1994, although there have been reforms instituted. And that's why today you still have, in the mining industry, strikes that are going on. There's still clashes going on inside the country. There's a strike going on right now against Northam Platinum. Thousands of miners are off the job because these corporations like Loman's, Anglo-American De Beers, Northam Platinum are owned largely by foreign capitalists, people from Britain, from Europe, the white settler class that remains in South Africa, the United States, still has tremendous interest there. So this is the next phase of the struggle. And they're going to have to move in the direction of seizing control of these mines, as well as seizing control of the land, similar to what was done in Zimbabwe in 2000, when the government there took over control of most of the arable land inside the country, because it rightly belongs to the people. Now, it's one thing to say, okay, when we take power, we're going to expropriate the ruling class of a society. Well,
okay.
You can take that position, but when you actually get in power, and you got to deal with fundamental practical issues, like maintaining the economy, maintaining people's jobs, maintaining their social services, providing some security and some system of governance inside of a country. People make those type of tactical decisions. And I don't think it's, up to us to judge Mandela and the ANC in terms of what they have not achieved over the last nearly 20 years, but look at it from the standpoint of what they were able to achieve. Now, younger generations now are going to have to push, the revolution there forward. I mean, just like here in the 60s and 70s, there were gains made in terms of civil rights and black political power and affirmative action. You had a lot more African Americans in universities. Because, I can remember when I first went to college in 1974, there were a lot of people who were my classmates at that time. Their parents, a lot of them had never even finished high school, and probably didn't even think that they would ever sit in a college classroom, you see.
Absolutely.
But we had made that was a positive thing. But then what happened? You had the Baki case. You had all these other right-wing legal assaults and political assaults on those gains. And now in Michigan, affirmative action is essentially outlawed right here in the state of Michigan, where you have so many African-American people. Look at the city of Detroit. We had the largest rebellion of any other city in 1967. In 1963, we had the first mass civil rights demonstration down Woodward Avenue 50 years ago. In 1973, we elected, perhaps the most radical black mayor in the country at that time, Coleman Young. And you compare that to what's going on now, where, the federal courts, the governor, and the banks, the corporations, are just running over the people in Detroit right now. And we don't have the kind of organization and fight back that we need to meet this challenge. So it could happen to anybody. If we don't remain vigilant in our outlook and in our struggle, these people will take back every single advancement. If we got young people that are coming along now who feel it's not necessary to be involved in the struggle, then the ruling interests, they love that. If they can teach you that, because we got a black president now, we don't need to struggle. We've made it. That's not realistic. That's not what's happening. Because on the ground, our people are suffering tremendous setbacks right now, all across, not just in Detroit, but all across the country.
Correct. In the last few minutes that we have here, we'll try to get a call. We'll try to squeeze a couple calls in. 781-330-864. Okay, now, so when we look at South Africa today, now the majority of people in South Africa are black African people, right?
Overwhelmingly so, yes. A lot of the whites have left over the last 20 years, because they don't want to live under a black government.
You said a lot of the whites have left. Okay, good. That's a good
thing. Yeah, they don't want to live under a black government, so they left, yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, now, so majority of the Africans today in South Africa, they are in, like, poverty. Their conditions, for the majority of them, I think, are they still, like, in poverty, the majority of them, or borderline poverty? What would be considered poverty there?
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with the world economic crisis, that the economy there is still tied with the mining industry and manufacturing, which is in a slump. And then when you have the workers demanding more money, like they have been ever since the ANC took power, you know, the trade unions and the people in the neighborhoods have still been demanding, you know, a greater share of the wealth of the country. And you can see in the last year and a half with all these strikes in the mining industry and people have lost their lives, you know, they're saying, hey, look, you know, we need to be paid a decent wage. We need to be treated humanely in these companies. And there are people there who are advocating still, you know, the seizure of the means of production and the land inside the country. But once that happens, they're going to have to face the wrath of imperialism, because just like Zimbabwe, they suffered for years. And they still, you know, have not fully recovered from the attacks from the British and the United States. They imposed sanctions on them when they took the land that the white folks had stolen during the last part of the 19th century. When they took their land back, firmly took it back and disenfranchised the whites, the whole wrath of the world capitalist system came down on them. So the same thing is going to happen in South Africa. And the ANC leadership eventually is going to have to face this question.
And then we'll go to
you
the
do have a
phone
lot of rich blacks there, though. But just to be clear, there are a lot of wealthy Africans in South Africa now who have made money over the last 20 years, who own interests in mining and other key industries inside the country. And you have a big middle class there, too. But then at the same time, you still have a lot of poverty among the masses.
Right, and the majority of the South Africans are in poverty, even though you have, because I've read about the burgeoning middle class and some that are wealthy, but the overall majority of them are still impoverished.
Yeah,
okay.
Just like
now,
you know, you got
absolutely.
You got like the Oprah Winfrey's and you know the people like
Bill
Kanye
Cosby,
West and Jay-Z. They got you know billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. But the communities in which they come out of are still very, very underdeveloped and depressed.
Absolutely. Now let me ask you this question. What is the, let me see which question I want to ask. We look at Nelson Mandela and you see a transition to taking up arms and advocating that they defend themselves, use force, and then a transition to, from my understanding, a transition to quote-unquote nonviolence. And
that's not really true. Yeah, that's
okay,
not, that never, nonviolence was never, particularly after 1960, that was never the ANC program, you know. And they suspended the armed struggle in 1990 to open up negotiations with the white government.
This was promoted by the media. This was promoted by the media. So talk about what happened.
What they say about Malcolm X. Well, you know, it's the same. It's like what they say about Malcolm X, that you know he went to Mecca and he was no longer, you know, a revolutionary. He became more revolutionary.
Oh no, that's not true.
After he
exactly. He became involved in the civil rights movement. He became involved in the civil rights movement and radicalized the civil rights movement. So explain it, because I hear some people who say that, well, Winnie Mandela was the real revolutionary and that Nelson Mandela sold the cause out, sold his people out, things like this. So put that into like historical context and explain, you know, because I'm sure you've heard these.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, during the time period after he got out of prison in 1994, his relationship, his wife, Winnie Madikizela Mandela, became very strained. I mean, they had been apart for 27 and a half years, and she had gotten into some difficulties as well in the late 80s that also put, you know, strains on their relationship. And she had disagreed with some of the policies that they had adopted, particularly in 93 when they came up with this draft for a transition that essentially the wealth, the fundamental ownership of the wealth will remain in the hands of the whites, and that the ANC would take over the government, and that there would be a gradual transfer of land and wealth. And a lot of people perceive that, as being a sellout. Some people did, some didn't. So that was the difference that they had over how to proceed. Now, she did participate for a period of time in the government, the first government that he had set up, and then she was dismissed from her post. And after that, she still was a member of parliament for many years in South Africa. And she's still a member of the ruling party, the ANC. But the ANC, they have differences internally. Even now, they got sharp debates that are going on right now inside the ANC and inside the union movements that are the backbone of the ANC politically and electorally. There's sharp debates right now over what direction to go. Some people feel that they should move more in a revolutionary direction in terms of taking over the mines and the land and so forth. And others feel they should maintain this same approach of instituting reforms, but allowing the neoliberal, capitalist economic model to remain dominant. Yeah, that's essentially that's the debate that's going on right now. Now, there are varying degrees of that struggle and discussion that's taking place, but essentially that's what it boils down to. So that's going to have to be worked out by the South African people themselves. They're going to have to determine, and there's going to be elections next year, just in a few months, probably by April. There'll be national elections, and Jacob Zuma, who's the president of the South Africa now and head of the ANC, is going to have to stand for election. So it'll be very interesting to see, because the ANC has gotten two-thirds or more than two-thirds of the electorate during every national election. They dominate politically inside the country. But, we'll see if they are able to maintain that dominance in the election next year. But I don't see any other party, particularly among the African population, that can effectively challenge them at this point, individually.
Okay.
Even if they form an alliance, it will still be very difficult.
Okay. All right, stand by. We got to take a quick break, and then we're going to go a little past the top of the hour, and we'll let you go. I know it's been a busy day, man. You got everybody calling you. But just stand by for a few minutes, okay? Abayomi?
Okay, I will. Yes, I will.
Okay, stand by. I want to let you know that January 1st, 2014, it's less than a month away. That's New Year's Day. The Uhuru Village presents a lecture by one of my teachers, Dr. Ray Hagins, Chief Elder and Spiritual Leader of the African Village and Cultural Center. He's a psychologist and educator. The topic is spirituality and pagan holy days. Spirituality and pagan holy days. This is January the 1st, 2014. This will be located at 313 Market Street in, Lighthouse Lighthouse Outreach Ministry, 715 Bellevue Avenue, Trenton, New Jersey. Lighthouse Outreach Ministry, 715 Bellevue Avenue, Trenton, New Jersey. This starts at 1 p.m. Tickets are $20 in advance, $25 at the door. Food will be served. You can purchase tickets at Isla Mae's Restaurant, located at 313 Market Street. For more information for Isla Mae's Restaurant and tickets, call 609-498-0642, 609-498-0642. For vending information and for tickets or general information, call Brother James at 609-516-499, 609-516-6499. Okay, so you definitely want to check this out. Don't miss this. Dr. Ray Hagins in Trenton, New Jersey, fantastic teacher. A lot of information. He's going to be dealing with spirituality and pagan holy days. Okay, you listen to the African History Network. We'll be back in just a minute, and we're speaking with Abayomi Azikwe, editor of the Pan-African Newswire.
So, what do you do now? Bills, vacation, college, retirement. You know the money is not there. Ignoring your situation will only make it worse, and a second job is out of the question. Well, there is a revolution going on, and it is not being televised. Millions of viewers and billions of dollars are leaving traditional TV and migrating to the internet. A change you may know about is the fact that the internet is giving a voice to average people that never had a voice before. What you may not know is that this revolution is presenting an opportunity for everyday people like you to create additional income that can make a huge difference in your life. UIN can position you to get paid on movies, subscription services, and more. You can go from being part of the mass of spectators to being a player who gets paid. To find out how you can be a part of this movement before the window of opportunity closes, go to www.uinmovies.com. That's uinmovies.com, and click the opportunity link and get involved today. Hello, African History Network family. This is Michael Imhotep, host of the African History Network show. I want to let you know that 2 of my new lectures are available now. Great African Women in History, The Mothers of Civilization, Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1 was recorded June 22nd and June 23rd of 2013 in Raleigh, North Carolina at the North Carolina Natural Hair Care Expo. I deal with some well-known and some not so well-known African women in our history, including Queen Nzinga, Ma'at, who was the personification of truth, justice, righteousness, balance, harmony, order, and reciprocity. Dr. Patricia Bath, Angela Davis, Osset, or Isis, the mother of Heru, and part of the first holy trinity of Asar, Aset, and Heru. Queen Charlotte Sophia, Assata Shakur, Madam C.J. Walker, Queen T, Henrietta Lacks, and more. This is a fantastic presentation. Part 1 is item number 703 at theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, and part 2 is available, which was recorded in Detroit July 27th. It's 4.5 hours. It's item number 704. In part 2, I deal with some more great African women in history, as well as dealing with economic empowerment and the fallout to the George Zimmerman verdict. So be sure to get your copies today. Visit theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. You can also give us a call with any questions at 313-462-0003, 313-462-0003. Mod Hotep, and remember, right knowledge corrects wrong behavior.
Has your 401k turned into a 201k? Are you getting double-digit returns on your investments, or are you stuck with getting 1 to 3% in the bank while the bank turns around and gets double-digit returns on your money? Would you like to know how you can get a minimum guaranteed 10 to 15% rate of return on your investments by using those often unused IRS tax strategies? G&G Associates Tax and Financial Consulting Services is a Black-owned business focused on easing our clients' mind on their tax and financial matters. We focus on educating and increasing our clients' tax and financial IQ by showing them how to make their money work hard for them instead of them working hard for their money. Visit our website at www.gngassociates.net and sign up for a free tax and financial e-newsletter on our homepage. And contact us for a free 1-hour tax and financial consultation, a $200 value. We service clients anywhere in the world. Again, that website is www.gngassociates.net, or you can call and set up your free consultation at 877-220-8333. Hotep. Peace and blessings.
Got body fat, obesity, overweight, constipation, gas, acid reflux, gout, edema, arthritis, and swelling? We've got just the product for you from the African Aloe Ferox plant. African Aloe Ferox bitter crystals drink and tea will help to regulate, cleanse, and detoxify your body, making you much more healthier and vibrant by balancing out your entire digestive tract. Try African Aloe Ferox by Alki Naturals. You can visit our website for more details and testimonials at www.alkeynaturals.com. Remember, God may forgive you, but your body won't.
All right, welcome back to the African History Network show. We have Abayomi and Azikwe on the line. We have them for a few more minutes here. We're going to try to get through. We got a couple quick questions here. We have Brother Anichi in Boston and Brother Shabazz in Greenville, South Carolina. We're going to go to Brother Anichi right now. You still there, Abayomi?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. All right, let's go to Brother Anichi. Okay, Hotep, Brother Anichi, welcome to the African History Network show. What was your question or comment?
I have a comment. A few months ago, I had a girl from South Africa. She stayed with us, my family, for about 4 or 5 months, and she had actually told me about a month ago that Nelson Mandela was sick and he passed away. She told me this a month ago, about a month and change ago. So she pretty much she already told me that he was dead. But I was like, okay. But she told me that people in South Africa, back there, they knew about it. They already knew that he was dead. And today the news dropped over here that he died today. So I don't know. I wanted to share that with you guys. Maybe if you guys knew it or not, or if you heard something about it.
Okay. Well, I know people were bracing in South Africa for the inevitable death, and authorities in South Africa were trying to figure out how they would deal with the death, things like that. So, okay, thanks for that information, brother. We'll get Abayomi's response, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the call. You can stay on and listen. Don't hang up if you want to continue listening to the rest of the show because we stopped live streaming, so you just stand by and listen. Okay. Okay, Abayomi, are you familiar with anything like that? Have you heard anything like that before?
No, I haven't heard anything about him dying a month ago. They were claiming he was near death, 6 months ago, but, he was able to survive, leave the hospital, and come home. They had set up pretty much a assisted living facility in his home.
Right.
Where he died today. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, let's go to Brother Shabazz in Greenville, South Carolina. Okay, Brother Shabazz, are you there?
Hotep, brothers, how y'all doing?
Hotep, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine. I guess I wanted to add in, especially giving an ashe to Brother Nelson Mandela in his passing. But also, I wanted to comment on what the last brother said because I guess there is a Nelson Mandela movie coming out. And this is the actuality.
It's yourself. It's already out, I think. I think it's already out. But go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I think from what I understood, it's supposed to be dropping soon. I'm not sure if it's out. I knew they had the other one with, where he was doing, Morgan Freeman played Nelson Mandela. In the
I'm talking about the one with Idris Elba. I'm talking about that one.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I wasn't sure if it had dropped yet, but I just wanted to talk about, especially when you all were talking about, going back to help the struggle. And this is one thing that I do realize on the miseducation level, and I wanted to ask this question, especially to, all of the many people we even had on Hidden Colors. One thing I know, even having spoken with all of those brothers and going back to African spirituality, we're still not unified. Where is it that we are going to get together? And we got some people over here saying it's okay to do this, and we got some people over there saying it's okay to do this, and define ourselves through many different things, because the actuality, in my mind, I'm wondering, even by us losing ego, because I'm a vegan for 2 years. I know everybody is not. And Brother Michael Imhotep, I heard what you're saying about having righteous behavior. And when I look at the melanated man or the melanated being, we are the custodians. We are the shepherds that were left here to take care of the land. Okay? Even in then, when we start eating animals, I have to question, because some ways I'm pretty sure we lost integrity, and especially we had, vegetation around us. Not all the time, but pretty much inside the jungles and wilds of Africa, we pretty much had everything. Why did we start to, kind of fall down, and by us eating or starting to become on the meat diet or starting to kill things in order to facilitate our life, was that us getting out of proper order? Because I still hear a lot of conscious brothers today say it's okay to eat meat. Then I have some brothers, so I'm questioning even our conscious community, because it kind of reminds me of the church. You know what I'm saying? And we down talk the country, right? But this is kind of pretty much the same thing, right?
Well, let me address this quickly, and then I'll turn it over to Abayomi. And you probably want to call in on Wednesday night to the Per Hour Questions and Answers show that I co-host with Professor Booker T. Coleman from Hidden Colors 1 and 2 for the Papa Kamene and get his input on that. But first of all, if we look at in this country, at least since Europeans have been here, and even before then possibly, but at least since Europeans have been here, you will not find a time, I don't think, where all African people were on the same page. Number one, okay, just like when you look at and then when we look at the continent of Africa, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a period of time when all African people on the continent of Africa were on the same page. Just like you probably won't find a time where all Europeans on the continent of Europe were all on the same page. African people historically on the continent of Africa, they didn't all see themselves as like one. They didn't classify themselves as African people. They didn't see themselves all as one people. You see what I mean? I'm talking about the different high cultures. We look at it today from a Pan-Africanist view, and we look at them, even though you have Yoruba and Jakuyu and Hausa and the Bele, we look at them as all African people, but historically they didn't see themselves as that. Okay, so we have to look at that dynamic, and then also when we put into context, even though they ate meat, from my understanding, and Abayomi may want to talk about this, Brother Kaba can input on this as well, before they would go hunt that animal, you know, they would say a prayer to ask for forgiveness for killing that animal, because they were only, see, they didn't, historically, we didn't hunt, from my understanding, historically, we didn't hunt for sport. We hunted for food, but we still ate we still ate plants, we still ate, you know, nuts and things like that. So, but see, when you look at the Western American diet, it's 60% meat. The diet consists like 60% of meat, and you have people who hunt for sport. So the whole reason and the process that goes into killing the animal and the understanding of it is totally different from a Western perspective than from a traditional African perspective. Okay, but let's get Brother Abayomi's input if he wants to comment on that.
Yeah, well, as far as I know, if you look at the origins of human society, it was a hunting and gathering society. And then later on, and this was thousands upon thousands of years later, that agriculture was developed. You had more of an agrarian society, and it was during that period that you start having classes that arose within society. And then from there, we moved on, you know, to a more stratified or structured society. Even in Africa, you know, we weren't communal. All societies in Africa were not necessarily communal. I mean, you had societies that were semi-feudal and feudal, even ancient Egypt. I mean, they had social classes that existed there. But a good book that would be a resource on this issue would be Frederick Engels' The Origin of the Family, Private Property and the State. And that book is largely based on this early anthropologist, Morgan, and his study of Native Americans in the United States. And it was quite interesting. Now, this book came out in Europe during the latter years of the 19th century, and it exposed that the vast centuries, millennia of human history, humanity was communal. And the period in which communalism fell is far less in terms of history than, you know, when men and women lived in classless society. So, you know, some people feel like, oh, well, men, you know, humanity has always been divided by class and race, and it's always been, you know, social divisions and war and so forth. That's not correct. That's not a proper analysis of human society. The overwhelming majority of the historical development of humanity has been under communalism. And, you know, we may return to that. You know, it will be a higher form of communalism, but it won't be strictly communal. But in terms of the fall of humanity being when, people started consuming meat, I'm not familiar with that line of thinking, because based upon all the information that I know that exists now, the early societies, in Africa and other parts of the world were hunting and gathering societies, and they were largely communal.
Right. Meat. Right.
Yeah, and they didn't hunt for sport. They hunted for,
right, exactly.
utilitarian purpose, for food and for clothing as well. Yeah.
Clothing also, yes.
And I appreciate that, brothers, and I appreciate the light, brothers.
I respect your not eating meat. That's probably very healthy.
No, sir, I never will. And if I can do it, we all can.
Yeah, I know. A lot more
exactly.
people are moving in that direction. A lot of people are moving in that direction now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, brother.
Y'all have a
thanks for calling in, brother.
Okay, yes,
you
sir.
Too, Hotel. Okay.
Hotel.
All right, Abayomi, let people know how they can get in contact with you.
Okay, you can go
and read the
blog.
Pan-African Newswire also. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go to the Pan-African Newswire website, the blog. It's at panafricannews.blogspot.com, panafricannews.blogspot.com, and you can email me through that website. Also, I'm on Facebook at Abayomi Azikwe. I'm also on Twitter at Panaf Newswire. So, please log on to the website, and you can contact us through the website.
Okay, and that's Abayomi. Have it?
Right, Abayomi, and the last name is Azikwe. Azikwe.
Okay, it looks like we have a last call here from the 276. I'm going to try to squeeze them in here. Call on the 276. Did you have a question or comment?
I was going to make a comment about the diet.
Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, it was true they did eat that, but it was very minimal. And also, Sheikh Hamid Job in Civilizational Barbarism, he took great issue with the work of Morgans and Frederick and Engels. That's all I want to say.
He said he took issue with what? He took issue with what?
The rise of patriarchy as seen and enunciated by Engels, Morgan, and what's the other guy? I lost my track off the other guy too. Was three of them, was Morgan, Engels, and
okay,
one of
the authors of the book.
Yeah, Marx, right. He took great issue with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He took great issue with their interpretation of history. He basically denounced it as a one-size-fits-all interpretation of history. You can read more about it in Civilizational Barbarism, a complete, authentic anthropology by Sheikh Hamid Job.
Okay, yeah, I'm familiar with that. And the thing about Engels is that he exposed that patriarchy was not the original form of human society, that many of the traditional societies that were communal were also matriarchal, and that, women had equal power and influence with men. So I don't think that contradicts what Sheikh Hamid Job said, because I know in West Africa they do have matrilineal societies as well, and he pointed that out even as early as The Cultural Unity of Black Africa. That was one of his earlier works in the 60s.
Yes, what I'm saying is he pointed it out.
People should definitely read that too, Cultural Unity of Black Africa as well.
Yes, I understand that, but what Job was saying was representing patriarchy as the normal culture for all of culture, regardless of what you are.
Oh, okay. It's a cultural standard. It's normal. It's the norm. Okay.
Right.
All right. Thanks. Okay. Thanks. Thanks for calling in, brother. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Keep listening. All right. Thanks. Hey, quickly, Abayomi, before I let you go, explain the concept of communalism. You talked about communalism. Explain that concept. What is that exactly?
Well, in general, it's a society where there are no class divisions, that people work collectively, and you have a non-exploitative relations, between human beings. Wealth and land is shared collectively. No one individual or one class or straight up people that control you know, the land, the
right.
food, or
So
the people
is this
inside a society.
right. So is this like the foundation of communism? Is there a relationship between communalism and communism?
Yeah, I think communism is more of a modern form of communalism. You know, considering the fact that it's almost impossible to go backwards because we do live in an industrialized, technological society now. But we can apply the principles of communalism, that is the shared wealth and shared distribution of wealth. We have the means now to do that through you know, industry and technology. It's no need right now for people to be hungry anywhere in the world, in the United States or anywhere else. We have enough technology now to feed the world, to house the world, to provide quality health care to everyone who needs it.
Absolutely.
But, you know, you just have a few people that are controlling all the wealth right now. And it's becoming, the wealth is becoming more and more concentrated